Action movies are back. In recent years, we've seen so many action movies release and actually be good. This year alone, we've had some action classics. Extraction 2 was a film that surpassed every expectation that I had of it, being not only the big win that Chris Hemsworth needed after the disastrous reception of Thor Love and Thunder, but also proving that the Extraction franchise had the legs to become a staple in the genre. There was John Wick Chapter 4, which, in my eyes, solidified the John Wick series as the best action franchise ever released. Each installment is excellent. The first was its major surprise. The second was a great follow-up that fleshed out the world and lore of the John Wick series. John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum built on everything that came before it and took the series to an unbeatable height, a height that John Wick Chapter 4 somehow overcame. John Wick Chapter 4 featured some of the greatest action scenes that I've ever seen and boasted, in my opinion, the best ensemble of characters in any John Wick film up to that point. There are scenes and moments in John Wick Chapter 4 that I genuinely believe I'll never see on screen ever again, or if I do, it will most likely feel like a pale imitation. That is how high the bar was set with John Wick Chapter 4. We also had the Mission Impossible film this year. Unfortunately, this film was killed by the hype surrounding Barbenheimer, which is a shame because the film is fantastic. I'm a big fan of the Mission Impossible films despite not seeing the first three, and I've got to say that like John Wick Chapter 4, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 felt like a video game in the best way possible. Especially the part where Ethan and Grace were climbing up the inside of a train, just like in Uncharted 2. There was also a film released called Sisu, which I'll be honest, I haven't actually seen, however I've heard great things. It also shows that an action movie can be great even on a lower budget, and this is me only pointing out all the great action movies released this year. There's also films like Nobody that proved that Bob Odenkirk didn't need to be Saul Goodman to have a hit on his hands, and Top Gun Maverick was one of the biggest films of last year. The point I'm making is that not only are action movies back, there are quite a lot for you to choose from. Not only that, but they were all well received by both critics and audiences, evidence of the high quality content for you to choose from. However, that can mean that some films may slip under the radar, especially if they came out just before the action movie resurgence. Enter Free Fire, a film released in 2016 that you've probably not heard of, despite the talented cast involved. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, or even mislead you here. Out of every film that I've mentioned in this video, Free Fire is most certainly the weakest. However, if you're looking for a good action film to entertain you whilst you sit back and drink a beer while stuffing your face full of greasy pizza, then Free Fire is definitely an excellent choice. But what is Free Fire even about? Well, Free Fire is about an arms deal that is happening during the 70s. Now, without going into specifics as to why, this arms deal ends up going completely wrong and a firefight breaks out between the arms dealers and the IRA members who came to buy the weapons. And that's it. That's the story of Free Fire. Nothing complicated. Nothing that's going to keep you up at night as you try and connect the dots of meandering plot threads. Free Fire is a very simple film carried by its action and characters. That said, the action in this film is not like the action present in the action films that I mentioned at the start of the video. No, it's more grounded, more realistic, less flashy. This isn't a film where you get to see Cillian Murphy wrap his legs around an enemy's head and then spin them down to the floor before shooting them in the head. No, this is a film where Cillian Murphy gets shot in the leg and then has to slowly crawl across the floor because of the agonising pain that his character is in. That's how the action is presented to us. It's not like other action films where the main character gets the crap punched, kicked, stabbed and shot out of them and then they just walk it off like it's nothing. This isn't the type of film where a character gets shot in the neck, falls off a bridge, nearly drowns and then trains their way back to full health. Action films are usually cool with moments of heart-pumping spectacle. They can make you wish you were like John Wick, with the capability to just annihilate a room of people. Free Fire is a slap in the face to tell you that no, getting shot hurts, and if you get shot several times, then you have a ticking timer until you inevitably die of blood loss. This film does an excellent job of showcasing just how painful the injuries in this film are. Characters limp and crawl after taking injuries. There's one moment where a character literally gets shot and they just instantly collapse. They don't die, they just fall to the floor due to the severity of being hit by a bullet. The actors all do a superb job of selling the pain their characters are experiencing. They take the occasional breather, they react to their character touching glass. You can see in the characters' faces that they're using up all of their energy just to drag themselves from one piece of cover to another. Fans usually like to compare their favourite action heroes over who would win in a fight. That won't be happening with Free Fire because all these characters would get one-shot by any of the leads in the action movies that I mentioned earlier. However, I wouldn't have enjoyed Free Fire so much if it wasn't for the diverse array of characters in the film. This is a film where you like pretty much every character. Even the characters that are so clearly assholes will somehow worm their way into your heart and make you go, this guy should probably die, but I wouldn't be too upset if he survived. Not every character is a winner, but it's surprising how many characters were able to stand out in this film. Firstly, there's Cillian Murphy as Chris. Like everyone else, I'm a massive fan of Cillian Murphy. I've been a fan of his ever since I saw him portray Scarecrow in Batman Begins, and he only solidified his membership among my favourite actors with a sublime performance as Tommy Shelby in the magnificent Peaky Blinders. Free Fire doesn't really have a lead character, but I'd argue that Chris comes the closest. He feels like the most sane of the characters, simply trying to survive the situation and make sure that Justine, who he has feelings for, is able to make it out of there too. In fact, he actually prioritises her survival over his own. Like the film's story, he's not the most complicated characters, but there is enough there for you to root for him, and in all likelihood he's the character that you will most want to survive against the film. On the opposing team is Ord, played by Armie Hammer. I'm going to tiptoe my way around Armie Hammer's character, as Armie Hammer has been the centre of some serious allegations that seem to have effectively destroyed his career. If you want to know more about that, then I recommend looking into it yourself, because the actual story of his allegations were far more complicated than I expected, and not as cut and dry as I've been led to believe. But putting that to one side, he gives a good performance in this film. And if you have no knowledge of his allegations or can separate the art from the artist, then you'll probably like his character and root for his survival too, as he essentially represents his group's version of Chris, since he's level-headed and makes overall wise decisions, although he seemingly has no issue putting people he doesn't like into near-death situations. Brie Larson's also here. I know that Brie Larson is quite divisive among audiences, but personally I think she's a good actress, and she gave a good performance here. Her character acts as the intermediary in the film, and initially you're not sure whose side that she's on. I like that the film treats her character very realistically. None of the characters really give her that much respect because she's a woman. It is the 70s, and she also isn't able to overcome everything thrown her way. She crawls and limps just as much as the guys, and when given the opportunity to escape the situation, she doesn't hesitate to take it. Like both Chris and Ord, she isn't very complex, but if you root for Chris, then you'll probably root for Justine, since the two are very clearly into one another. However, the standout of the film is Sharlto Copley as Vernon. Vernon is just a bundle of manic energy. Free Fire features the trend in action movies of having dark humour. There isn't loads of humour, nor is any of it particularly gut-busting, but this film did make me laugh. And a lot of that can be attributed to Vernon, who is just very clearly out of his element in this film. He misses shots with his gun because he holds it one-handed, he freaks out after getting the most mild of wounds, and won't stop pestering his allies throughout the firefight, often asking them whether he's lost too much blood.
I like your cardboard armour.
Protection from infection!
Shut.
He's definitely the highlight of the film for me, and I think this film is worth watching purely for Sharlto Copley's performance. The last character I'm going to mention is Steve-O, played by Sam Riley. Earlier I said that there are some characters in this film that are total assholes that you somehow end up enjoying watching. Steve-O is that character. This guy is completely irredeemable. One could argue the worst person in the film, and yet he was just so engaging to watch on screen. There'll be bullets flying overhead and he's just doing drugs in the midst of all the chaos. And he says some awful things too. He's just the sort of character that you simultaneously love to hate and yet also hate to love. The only major issues with this film is the beginning and end of it. Fortunately, the firefight takes up the vast majority of the film, because without it, the film kinda sucks. The reason why action films have done so well lately is because whilst the action is without a doubt the biggest draw, when there's no action on screen, you're still enjoying yourself. The beginning of Free Fire is just so bland and boring. Because there's no action, there's only really the story to hook you, and as I mentioned earlier, the story for Free Fire is really simple, and therefore not particularly interesting. It doesn't help that all the characters' personalities don't really come out until the shooting starts. Also, this film isn't that visually interesting, so without the gun flashes and loud bangs to distract you, this fact is far more noticeable at the start of the film. I also didn't like the film's ending. It's by no means a film ruiner, but it does sour the film a little. Without getting into the specifics of the ending, the film makes it seem like it's going in a certain direction with its ending. Now, the initial direction was one that I could actually get behind. It would have definitely been a simple ending, but as I've made clear, this is a simple film. But then, just before this perfectly fine ending is able to take form, a character does something that just completely ruins everything. It doesn't help that the character that does this annoying thing was one that I liked less than the characters that they did the annoying thing to. I'm really trying not to spoil the ending, and it's certainly possible that you'll enjoy the ending far more than me. It's just that I preferred the initial direction that the film seemed to be heading. All in all, Free Fire was a film that was much better than I expected. This is a film directed by the same guy who directed Meg 2 The Trench, although in fairness he only directed Meg 2 The Trench, whereas he also wrote and edited Free Fire. If you're someone who really likes action movies, or Cillian Murphy, then I do recommend watching Free Fire because it is actually a really good time. Also, it's not too long, clocking in at an hour and 26 minutes. Free Fire may be a forgotten action movie, but with time, hopefully it can become a cult classic as more and more people watch it, whether they catch it on TV or their favourite streaming service. Anyway, that's all for today. Bye bye.